Hello, German followers, subscribers, and watchers of my YouTube videos. Today is Cosplaying the Geekfort, and I am here with Black Bettie Cosplay. Hello!
Hi,
How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Great! So let's get started. Tell
Yeah.
me, when did you start cosplaying?
Um, so I've been doing costuming for a really long time. I was like a theater kid,
Oh,
but I don't consider that cosplaying, or at least I didn't see that as cosplaying. So I've been doing that for a really long time. I actually studied costuming for theater as well as directing. That was like my major was theater. Um, and then it wasn't, I think, until after I graduated that I actually came across the term cosplay. Like I was at a con and someone like was like, "Oh, it's cosplay." And I was like, "What's that?" So I think that was around like 20, no, it was like 2007, I think, ish. And so that's when I first did a cosplay. And then I kind of took a break after doing it for a little bit because I was in college, I had school stuff. So I really didn't really get into cosplay until like 2010 and stuff like that. So that's when I actually started doing cosplay and continuing from then on.
so when you decided to first do it, it wasn't like you just said, "I'm going to do cosplay." You just were thinking, "Oh, I'm going to go to this thing and dress up."
Yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, people dress up to go to cons. I can do that. So I was like, that was
Cool.
the first time I started like doing it beyond like Halloween or like a book signing or a theater event where I didn't see that as like like it was weird because like people didn't do it for movies, but I knew some friends who would dress up for movies, but no one called that cosplaying. It was just like being a super avid fan. And so like finally when I started doing actual cosplaying, it was like, oh my God, it's a thing. So it was just two very different worlds. Like, I don't know. It was still
Cool.
costuming. I didn't call it that. No one else around me called it that. So,
Until that one person at the con sort of like said it, and you were like,
yep. Then,
"Oh, okay."
ooh, what's that? I've been doing it all along. Holy cow. Yeah.
Remember what cosplay you did, or what
Um,
you wore?
the first cosplay I did, I think, was from Harry Potter. It was Angelina Johnson. I made her Quidditch robes. And that was the first time I'd actually based something off of a movie. So that's like first time I was like, this is actually cosplay. Because otherwise it was like I was just designing something that I thought was cool or whatever, or it was like a basic Halloween costume I put together. So that's the first time I was like, oh, I'm gonna look at all these like screen accurate photos and I'm gonna wear it to the premiere. And it was like a big deal. So that was the first time I cosplayed.
Wow, and so that was back in 2010, or that was the 2007?
No, that was 2007. So that was like
Wow.
way, way back when.
Okay.
As a
Cool.
baby. Baby cosplay for me.
There you go. And then so in 2010, you were like, okay, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to make something.
Yeah.
Remember what that one was? What was that first foray into that?
I think that first one, so it's actually like more complicated than like, oh, I just did it for fun and then I stopped. It was part of it was that when I started cosplaying, I was just like, oh, I can do whatever I want. Oh, that's so much fun. And then I just remember it was mostly online for me, like the people who were involved with cosplay. And I just remember seeing this list that was like for anime stuff. People were like, here are Black characters that you can cosplay as a Black person. And I just remember being like, I have to do just this list of characters. Like, I can't just be whoever. And that was just, I think that was kind of like the general vibe because so many people were like unsure. And I lived in Portland, which was like really white. So it's not like I had a lot of other Black cosplayers to be like, yeah, no, do whatever you want. Like, you kind of saw a certain trend. So you're like, are people going to be mad if I don't look exactly like the character? Or so I think that kind of put a bad taste in my mouth because even the people in that group kind of felt so scared and they were Black cosplayers that they were kind of like, yeah, that seems like the safest thing to do. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So it's like, well, this was fun. I'm going to go do something else now. So I just went back to regular costuming and steampunk and other stuff that just kind of, there wasn't a design you were basing it off of. You were just doing your own thing. And then I'd met enough people who were doing cosplay or in the steampunk scene who also did anime cons. And they're like, no, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to do whatever I want. You do whatever you want. And I think that's when I was kind of like, okay, let's do this. Let's go back. Let's actually cosplay whatever I want. I don't have to make my original designs to feel comfortable. And so the first thing I did was I'd actually been cosplaying at home. And then 2010 was the first time I went back to cons, like in a cosplay, like not scared. And for that, it was, I did Audrey Ramirez from Atlantis Lost Empire. So that was really fun because it was simple, but it was like really fun, and I loved the movie, and I was like, it's recognizable. People like the characters, and it actually went really well. Like that was my first con, and I was like mid-20s or something. So I was like, I'm gonna be the oldest person. Actually, it wasn't even mid-20s. It was like late 20s. I think I was like 28 or something. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be so old. It's gonna be me and their parents. And I'm just like, oh God. But I actually had been in like, it's for KimuraCon. So I found a chat room and there was somebody looking for like roommates or friends. And I saw this other person who was like, I'm also 28 and I'm looking for someone to hang out. And I was like, I'm 28. You're like me. And so then we just hung out all con and it was really nice. Yeah, that was like a really good experience to like get into it. And then I was just like, yeah, let's do this. This is so much fun.
Cool. So since then, what has been the one that's been like the most ambitious that you've ever created, or the one that's been the most challenging?
I feel like they kind of just like grow in ambition level like as I go along. So like, oh, this was simple and the next one's a little more complicated, and oh, this one I'm gonna make the entire thing from scratch. So like I always sewed most of my costumes, but like armor was something I didn't do a lot of. A lot of like male cosplaying I hadn't done as much of, just because you have to do more construction work if you're trying to make a more femme body fit a male outfit, because you have to like do extra considerations for where things go. So I didn't send a picture, but like Manolo was probably one of the more complicated ones that I started doing because it was just a lot of construction work and it was not very forgiving. And then Riju, which I did send you a picture of, she just had all these little details and this elaborate headpiece. And it was more ambitious for me because I don't show my stomach and she has her stomach out. So, but I think the other one they did that I think was the most recent ambitious project was probably Mad Moxie, because it was like using all these techniques I'd done plus some other ones like using lights and like effects like that, as well as cell shading, which I'd never really done in general. But a friend of mine who was a cosplayer who does Borderlands a lot, like showed me a lot of their techniques of how they did cell shading. And so it was like a lot of stuff that I was using like corset making that I'd done before, but like all coming together into like one piece. So it was like, that was like, I did it all. I took all my years of knowledge and I made it into this one costume.
That's
So
awesome.
that was definitely one of my most ambitious ones right now. So
Cool.
yeah.
So what part of those two costumes would you say was the part that you looked at and were like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do this, and then by the end you're like, I did it. It worked out great. What was I thinking? That was easier than I thought.
The overall cell shading work, as well as like it's a bunch of little pieces that's like there's a corset and then there's a jacket that goes over the corset, and then that has details, and there's like a print design. There's just like a lot of little details that like the more you look at it you're like, oh my God, there's that and there's that and there's that, and then cell shading on top of it. And I decided I wanted to actually construct most of it, not just paint it on after the fact and just make a base. So I was like, I'm gonna make the corset and actually put boning in it, and then I'm gonna make it a jacket and figure out how the heck this thing would actually go on, because it's like half of the top of a sweetheart corset is poking out, so you have to be like, how would this stay on your body, because only half of it is on you. So it's a lot of like engineering components that like until you start actually assembling it on a mannequin you're like, this might not work, I might put it on and it falls off. Because it's like it's a model on a game versus a person. Like these two things may never actually work. Like there's plenty of anime stuff like that where you're looking at it and like, no one can wear clothes like that. How do you even put it on? There's no closures.
Or how does it stick? Like how does it stay? Like
how does that stay on?
No.
Do you just glue it to yourself?
Here, yeah. There's nothing here. Like here. Why?
Nothing at all, and yet it's okay.
And then you find there's some male ones that do that. And you're like, what? I don't know if that's going to work for the men either. Like that doesn't.
It's like, that doesn't make any sense. Who designed this? You didn't think about actual clothes. Yeah. Well, gotta love it. It's like making 2D drawings work as garments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the fact that you grew up doing costuming, though, you had an idea of like, okay, I know what to do to make something. Like if someone just tells you, oh, what does it look like when you do this? You can say, oh, I know in my mind, this is how it's going to look and that's the shape it's going to be. Because you're used to the idea of like, you talked about a form, putting on a form. Like, you know how to put it on a form. Like me, I barely have head things to put my wigs on. I don't even know about forms.
Yeah. It's definitely like, it's like almost like a little engineering like project in my head. I'll start looking at a costume and I'm like, Seeing it, starting to see it like evolve. I'm like, okay, maybe there's a buckle here, Velcro. I don't know. Maybe that's stuck on there. Oh no, it's overlay. Like, I think that's kind of what I like about making costumes is like looking at something that's a drawing and being like, how do I make this work on a human? Like, how does this actually logically exist, like in the real world, not just in drawing form?
Yeah, well, it's like some of them, like the one you sent me of Audrey Ramirez. Like, okay, she's wearing overalls. Like, okay, that's an easy, like, whether you make them or you buy them, it's like overalls, check. But then you have something like you said with Riju, it's like, okay, how does that belt that's coming off the big piece of sun come all the way down there and not fully fall off the body, you know?
Yeah. Like all those little parts, and like sometimes even like deceptively simple ones can be really complicated. Like for Audrey Ramirez, I was like, I want to make it because it's supposed to be a period piece, and so I was like obsessively staring at, okay, well, this is the kind of hat it actually is, and like these are the kind of overalls that she's wearing, so it would have this kind of cut, and like kind of looking for like patterns that might match, or like looking at reference images that like exist. And that's kind of like an extra fun thing that's nice to do. I actually have one friend who will take a simple, like she did like a Scooby-Doo design, but she took the like patterns that existed in that era. So she was like, I'm going to actually be inspired by the 60s and the 60s patterns, so it would look accurate, but it'll still look like the character. And that's just like kind of a fun way to like make a simple design look really neat and kind of be more interesting to make. So
cool.
It's always fun.
That is always fun. I think that's great. So what would you say that is your favorite part of cosplaying? Would you say it's the construction or the sewing or the builds? What would you say?
I definitely like the creation part. Like, I think that's the initial part that I really like, and then also like bringing it all together. Like, that's the like super exciting part, because like when you have it all on and you're like, oh, I did it. You're like, I'm that character, which is kind of like really exciting, especially when I'm making a commission or doing it for somebody else or helping a friend, and then they put it on and then they're like, oh, what? No. And I'm like, yeah, you did it. Like, it's so much fun. Like, that buzz is like the best part about cosplay. It's just like, oh my god, I made it happen.
So then for that buzz you're talking about, which one though have you done so far that you think is like your favorite, the one that you love to have or wear?
I love them all. I do. It's like I like hate picking favorites, because like unless it's like really, really uncomfortable, I pretty much like wearing almost all of them, because it's like, well, they're a labor of love, so I better like them. Like, why wouldn't I like that? I just spent like 20 to 5 years on them, maybe. Like, but then there's some where it's like wearing it, you just feel like really awesome. And so like, I think Riju is a lot of fun. Like, she looks like she'd be really uncomfortable to wear. And I think the first time I did her as like a test run, I actually played like a 2-hour game of Jenga while wearing her, which you wouldn't think, because her wig like weighs, I want to say like 10 pounds. It's not a light wig, because it's huge.
It's the wig, and then you have the thing on it.
It's the wig and the crown, and then it's like a long tail. It's huge. Wow. And surprisingly, I was able to play Jenga without knocking everything over. So she's like really fun, because she looks like she'd be really uncomfortable, but she's so much fun to just like run around in. And then you have to remind yourself to not lean forward, because you have a crown that'll poke people's eyes out, but you look awesome too. So you're just like, yeah, I'm so cool, and yet I'm also fun and spunky, which is very much her character. So it's like, I really like that about wearing that character.
I think it's great that you really get into the character and you see it like this character. So it sounds like also the character that you see or you like is also part of what makes it seem like it's your favorite, because you enjoy being those characters and what they represent to you. Yeah,
like that's my theater background, I think. I'm just like, oh, I want to play this role. I want to be them, you know? I think that's part of like why I was so turned off way back when people were like, you only get this list of characters who look exactly like you. And I was like, I mean, that's cool, and there are some that I like on that list, but they're characters that I just saw on the screen, and their personality's fun, and I'm like, I just want to be them. Like, who watches a Peter Pan movie or like Hook and isn't like, I want to be Rufio? Like, it would suck if someone's like, oh, you can't be Rufio, you're a girl. Like, what? You're so boring. Let me be Rufio. He's awesome. I want to be Rufio. So I think that's like kind of the fun that like every cosplayer enjoys. I mean, there's some people who are like the construction people, but they may not consider themselves cosplayers because they don't like to wear the costume, which is totally valid. But I know for the people who cosplay, whether they make it or buy it or whatever, the fun is just putting it all on and being that character and just like being super excited to be this character that you love so darn much. It's like the extra level of like fandom. You're like, I love them and now I am them. So
cool. So now you talked a little earlier about male cosplay or male characters.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself then someone who does a lot more gender bend, or do you think everything, like you just like everything and you don't care whether it's male or female?
I myself am very gender fluid. I'm non-binary. And cosplay kind of helped me acknowledge that fully. But I've always like just liked the designs of the characters. I have done some that are like by definition a gender bend, where I'm taking the character's original gender and then adjusting it to whatever I want it to be. But often, sometimes I just want to literally be how the character already exists. So I think it just depends on like if I saw a design that I already liked or if I want to put my own spin on it. But I kind of feel like that's another part of the fun. Like you can make them whatever you want. Like it's just another performance of that character. And so like I follow some amazing drag artists, and I've seen some of them even do cosplay, and they'll take a drag take on that character. And so I like, you know, exploring the binary of those characters as well as how it might relate to me. So it just depends on how personal I want to get with it, or if it's more about being like accurate to the design of the character and like staying loyal to like that character's concept. So it's pretty open-ended for me. Like I don't think I've ever looked at a character and be like, oh, I would never do them because of that. Yeah, it's kind of like whatever, let's go. You know,
yeah,
like if I like it, I'm gonna do it.
Everything I've seen you do ever since I first saw you, and all the things you do, like you're just like, I want to do this, I'm going for it, and I'm gonna see how it works, and I just love it. And I think that's really great that you're willing to just step out of those kind of comfort zones that as cosplayers that we can get. I know in my head, I get in my head and I'm just like, I don't know if I could do this. I just don't know.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. And you're just like, I'm doing it.
I mean, I think it's definitely scary. Like for a while, I think when I first started doing it, I was like, oh, people might not like it if I do that character, or they might not like it if I do that character in this way. Like even like just having curly hair, like choosing to do a character with curly hair, or hair that's closer to my texture, like people might not like that because it's always been done this way. Like Deku from My Hero Academia, like he almost is always done with like a straight hair wig, but I was like, I don't like how those wigs look on me. So I was like, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it with curly hair because I think it would look cuter. And like I really liked how it turned out. Like it could have gone horribly wrong, it's entirely possible, but I was like, if I don't try, I won't know. So
yeah, I think it's great that you tried, and you're not worried about like, oh, what's that person on the internet going to say, or what's that photographer going to think, or what's that other cosplayer that I may or may not know personally think about it. I think it's great, like you said earlier, when you first did it, you let this person or group of people who said, this is the list, and it's like, oh, okay, oh, and you were just sort of like, I'm taking the list and throwing it out.
Yeah, like as I've been saying recently, it's like my spite cosplays, because it's like it's a hobby. Even if you're doing it professionally, it still started as a hobby. It's an art form, and it's like, why should someone else get to tell you how you're going to express yourself or what you like to do? It's like if you're an artist and you wanted to paint something, you're not going to have a good time if someone tells you how to paint it. Like, why paint then? You know, it's so. I know it's really easy to focus on what other people might think or what they might think is popular, but if you're not having a good time, it's just gonna ruin it for you. And I think like ever since I started being like, honestly, I don't care. Like you could hate it, you could like it. I don't care. I'm just gonna do it for me. And at the end of the day, as long as I'm happy, that's what matters. And I think that's helped a lot of people, because I know more and more people who are like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do too. I don't care. I like this. I'm doing it. If you don't like it, so be it. You don't have to follow me, or you don't have to look at it. And I think it's a really good way to approach it. Like in cosplay, it's like, just do what you love about it and you'll have a good time.
Cool. I think that's some great advice to give to anyone, especially if they're new or if they've been doing it a while. Because even as someone who's done it a while, it's just like, don't worry about, like, just to get out of my head. I'm just going to get out of my head. Yeah. So cool. Awesome. Yeah. So, so when, like, what happens though when you are in your head and you're hitting that obstacle and you just don't know what to do to get yourself motivated again? What gets you out of your head or gets you out of the obstacle that's keeping you there?
I think sometimes you have to take a break. Like I've had projects where like I've tried 5 things and everything went horribly wrong. And it's okay to be like, I'm gonna step away from this or work on something else, even a different cosplay, like just do something that you enjoy or revisit an old costume or something just so that you don't get so hung up on it, because it happens. Like I've definitely had some costumes where I started working on them and I needed to take like a year-long break from it, and then I come back to it and then it's like, yeah, I got this, I figured it out. And sometimes it's because you might not have the skills at that time to do it, or you might not be in the right mindset, you're not excited anymore. Like sometimes you do have to take a break or a breather, even if it's like for like a couple of days, an hour, maybe a month. It's still okay. And I think sometimes that's what you need. Or you get a friend and ask them, because sometimes you're way in your head and your friends are like, it's fine. Why are you stressing out? It looks just fine. No one will notice but you. No one. And that's true, because like I've had things where I'm like, everyone's gonna hate it, it's gonna be awful, and then you actually like show it to other people and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. It looks fine.
I think it's great that you have a support system around you who can like help you when you're like in your head too much. Like you can just, guys, people, what is it? What? And they can help you with that. That's great. And I think it's also good that you take breaks, like especially if it's a big project. I mean, gosh, some of these ones you sent me, like the Borderlands one, I've forgotten the character's name.
Mad Moxie, yeah.
Yes, that one, man, that looks. That's a lot. I mean, You've got a prop, you've got that little hat, you've got that belt. I mean, all that alone just looks me. I'd just be overwhelmed by all that.
Yeah, she has a lot of pieces. Like, I think when I first started her, I was like, just start on the thing you know how you need to do. And I was like, I need to make some like boot covers. And I was like, I have a pattern for it. Let's start there. It's simple, get it done. And then like slowly get to every next thing, because it was really overwhelming to look at. I was like, where do I begin? And sometimes it's like you make a list, you figure out what you can do first, and you'll get there. You'll get through it.
That's a good way of putting it. I think you'll get there. You'll get through it and making like simple tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great that you started with just that. Okay, you know one thing that's for sure on there that you know already had to do. Just focus on that, and you'll get to the other things on it that are just like, whoa. Well, cool.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to going to cons, what is one con that you have never been to that you would love to eventually go to, if and when they reoccur?
I've never been to the big Comic-Con, like not once. So that one would be really fun to check out. I'm sure it's like terrifying. Like everything I've heard from everybody, it sounds terrifying. But I've always wanted to go. It seems, well, it's that one or Dragon Con. Those are the two like big ones on my list, which is really sad because I almost went to Dragon Con last year and then everything happened. So sad. But both of those just are like all the stories and just the picture. I'm like, someday. I'm sure it's gonna be terrifying, but someday it would be really cool to go.
So what is a con that you have gone to that you really love and you enjoy going back to every year?
I think one of my favorites has been Rose City Comic Con. It's like my little local con. And it's always been like kind of like a nice little breather because it's like near the end of the year and you just kind of get to see everybody and catch up. And like certain days it's definitely very chill compared to some of the other large cons, and it's just kind of nice. You can get to like see like celebrities and all that, and it's just, I feel like it's like a slightly less intense version, but they still bring like some really fun content. So it's like you get all the goods of like a bigger con, but it's not quite as, I mean, it's still growing though, because like the last couple of years have been a little bonkers, but it's still like a very like nice kind of mellow hometown con for me. So I'm always excited to go.
Cool. And so what is a cosplay that you're working on right now? Like what's one that you're working on that you would be interested in telling us about?
So I'm working on it, as in I'm still conceptualizing. I'm like working on, so I've been obsessed with Hades game. It's like such a fun little video game, and I've already done 2 characters from it, and I want to do the one I was supposed to do first, but just life got in the way and I just didn't have time. But the title, well, not the title character, but the main character, Zagreus from the game, it's because he's just kind of fun and simple and very much like the personality type I love, where he's just kind of snarky and kind of a daring do kind of fun character. And so I have a bunch of stuff planned for him that I'm going to try and pull together. He has some like lighting elements I'm going to try and add, and like some fabric painting work that I want to do, because his costume's actually fairly simple. It's more like a toga, and then he just has a bunch of accessories. So I get to do some prop building for him, which will be nice. Like he's like got a sword and shields, and he's got like skull armor. So
that sword of his, is that
yeah.
something you're gonna try and like
Yes.
do?
I'm gonna try to make it light up. I'm like, that's like my new like random thing I'm trying to experiment with more, is like lights. Let's make everything glow. It's just a fun thing to try. So
that sword alone.
I know. I'm like,
that looks phenomenal.
I love it.
Cool. Well, I do know I loved your Lore Olympus that you've sometimes done on your TikTok. They've been so great, especially your take on Persephone. I love it.
Awesome. Yes, I love that. I love that. I'm just like Greek mythology, everything. It's like my weak spot.
Mine too. When I was a little kid, one of the first things I did a school report on was on his Greek mythology book.
Oh my god, that's so cute. I love it. Oh, yeah. I've been enjoying that comic. It's so cute and so much fun. And I'm always like, ooh, a new design. Like, dare I?
It's just the artwork and everything, and just the way they did it is amazing. So that's exciting. We'll talk about the body painting. How is that for you? Like, what's that process like for you when it comes to body painting?
So body painting was something I kind of had a hit or miss experience with actually before quarantine, shockingly. I started doing some Lore Olympus before quarantine. Like I had one con that I got to do it. It was actually a mess. It was Rose City and it rained that weekend. So that was so much fun. I like had painted myself at home and I was like in the car and it was like raining and I had an umbrella, but it was just like, my face was fine, but it was on my hands too. And I was just like, this is a bad idea. It was such a bad idea. Oregon weather and body paint, not good unless it's summer. But I'd had some times I'd done it in the past and it just was kind of a mess. Like I think for a lot of people when they first start doing body paint, you'll like try with the sponge and other stuff, and or you'll do grease paint, and like a lot of them have a learning curve. Afterwards I started like asking other people, and I found like a couple bits of advice about how to do body paint, like at least the water-based kind, in a way that worked really well. And so I started experimenting with it. I think that's partly why I did like the whole, like, let's just paint a bunch of Lore Olympus characters in a week. Cause I was like, if I can't figure it out then, how will I ever figure it out? And so for me, usually it's like, I have to like kind of set everything up, use the bathroom. Because once you have it on, you're like, I'm not eating or drinking or going near the toilet until I'm done, pretty much until I'm done. But yeah, I think like a lot of it was like practice and patience and a kabuki brush. Those things are like, they're lifesavers. I don't care what anyone else says. I'm like, that's it. That is the tool. Get that. And they don't even have to be expensive. Like it's just a big poofy brush. Yeah. You can find them everywhere. Holy. And ever since I found that, I was like, body paint. Yes. And then eyeshadow for contour. It's amazing. Just get a big pack of eyeshadow colors. And it's like changed my life. I'm like, ooh, I want a body paint for everything. People are like, I don't want a body paint. I'm like, no. You're just not doing it right. For me, the hardest color is still yellow. Like there's something weird about yellow pigment, like it just goes on weird. Like I started, like you, I was doing a video, I started doing it, but the camera also hates yellow. So it doesn't know what to make of it. It's kind of like trying to make it look like a normal skin tone. So I couldn't see what I was doing as I was painting. I was just like, what are you trying to make this look like? This isn't right. So I had to stop it because I was like trying to do this tutorial and I was like, and you put this here. And I was like, that looks the same. I don't see contour. What's happening? So yeah, body paint colors. It's a trip. It's like cameras aren't designed to look at weird colored people. So it's just like, what do you want from me? But it's fun. I love experimenting with it because it's such a neat, simple thing you can do. And you can do it at home. You don't have anywhere else to go. Yeah. So you can body paint yourself.
it's like you said earlier, quarantine. It's like,
I know.
well, like, I think that's one of the things about cosplay, especially during this time frame. Like, there are some people who cosplay and they're just like, oh, I can't do anything because I have nowhere to do it. And it's like, got
You're home, you got your phone.
press record and you
Exactly.
oh
It's like that's still a thing, you know?
yeah.
Totally valid. I know a lot of people who've started doing it more because they're like, oh yeah, I can do video and photos with my friends, and I'm like, yeah, see, don't need a con.
And what, for you, has that been an easier thing then? Like when it comes to wanting to do it, like as before with a con, you're like, okay, I need to plan to make sure I do this on this day and get this ready by this day, and then have this. So that whole con crunch thing, like, do you feel like that's less of a problem now because the con crunch?
I kind of miss con crunch because I think it was like a goal. Like you knew you had to have stuff ready for this con, and so you're kind of like, oh, what am I doing now? My whole year was planned around a con, and I'm just like, which costume do I work on? Because I don't know what it's for, and I'm like, I could do anything. I think that's part of it. You're just like so overwhelmed that you could do anything because it's not for anything. So that part I don't like, but the fact that you have more time is kind of nice. The fact that you don't have to go anywhere is nice. Like you can just literally shoot it and then you can go back to chilling, or you can go watch video games or play video games or something. So it's kind of nice. It's like a little less stress. But I know like it's harder for a lot of people I know who are like to get motivated because they had like a goal, and without a goal, you're just like, ugh. So I know more people are starting to do like group projects, and that helps because it's like, we set a deadline, let's do this, and that helps some people getting like going again.
Cool idea.
But,
yeah, I never thought about that. That's a cool idea. Cool. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing all this information. It's really great. Is there anything else about cosplay that you think is important for people to know, or that you found has been helpful that you haven't seen anyone else share about, or anything? Any tips or anything?
I don't know if it's something that someone else hasn't shared, but I do think it's really important that people realize that you don't have to look exactly like the character. Like that's literally half of the fun. That while it can be an expensive hobby, it doesn't have to be. It just depends on how you decide to approach it. And that's part of the whole, like, there's no one right way to do it. Like, it's okay to use your closet. It's okay to buy your items. It's okay to commission items. It's okay to make it from scratch. It's okay for it to not even look exactly like the character. It can be your own spin. That's all of those things are cool. And I think that's what people are kind of losing sight of a little bit. Because social media is everything now, especially since we're all trapped inside. But it's still okay, like just to do your own version. Like there's literally nothing wrong with that. And I think we need to stress out less about it and just have fun.
Cool. I think that's important, just to have fun, like not to stress about it. Yeah. But I think it's also just a great community to be a part of, even though like you have a group of people that you do it with the most. There's like so many other people within like the community, because it's such a cultural phenomenon that's not just about one group of people. Like it's not like sports where like I like this team only, you know. You're a cosplayer, like
exactly. Like you like this fandom, and you like that fandom, and they will overlap and they may not overlap, and that's all cool. Like you'll find
you can mash them up if you want to.
Exactly. Yeah, you can make them combine. It's totally valid. I think that's what's kind of fun about it. It's not like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, it's us versus them. It's like, oh no, I like this, and then I also like this, and I like this thing, and they're vaguely related.
Yeah.
And sometimes that leads you to like that thing you didn't like before. You never know.
Yeah, that's totally true. I think that's a really great way of looking at it. So cool. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem.
So now, where can people find you on the internet? Like, what's the main place that you are on the most that people would be able to see you regularly?
So I'm always on Twitter. Because that's always fun. But I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm sometimes on Facebook, but mostly Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram under Black Bettie Cosplay in some capacity. I think on Twitter it's bbetty_cosplay because they're weird with lengths of names. But yeah, generally if you look up Black Bettie Cosplay, you'll find me. So.
Cool. Well, I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if anyone's interested in giving back this year, I've put a few links down there for charities that are looking for people to help them out in giving back this year. So you can always check those out as well. And then also, if you're interested, anyone that's watching this video, come back here on Sundays. I will be here from at 2 o'clock Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern, doing Sundays in the Geekfort, playing Mad Libs, and just talking about all the sort of geek things that like we talked about today. So thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you again, Black Betty, and everyone have a great day. Bye.